is honestly one of the most exciting and uplifting figures in our current political maelstrom, and also seems to be one of the only voices who actually understands what our nation is today, which is why it is not only an honor to introduce Van, it is imperative to have Van address this audience of leaders in business, finance, technology, and media. So everybody give a big hand to Van Jones.
Well, it's good to be here. Can you hear me all right? Good. Well, my prediction has come true. President Trump is being more presidential, but his model apparently is Nixon, and maybe he'll be out of here soon, so that's a good thing. But then again, maybe he won't. Maybe he won't. I want to talk about how we got in this situation in the first place. How a cartoon villain managed to take over the White House. Somebody who, from an environmental perspective, is an absolute catastrophe for the children of all species. Let me just be very clear. The United States and the world can recover from all kinds of stuff. We can recover from really stupid tweets. We can recover from even a really bad healthcare policy. We can't recover from two things, and the world can't recover from two things. One is nuclear war, and the other is runaway catastrophic climate change. And those two threats are now more present, more likely, and more of an overhang than they've ever been in the history of the country because of this president. And so when you get an outcome this bad, it's not good enough to just sort of stay in your filter bubble, keep retweeting all the stuff you like, sometimes making your own meme, putting it on Instagram, and hoping all your friends like it a lot. Like, those kind of dopamine hits are false comfort. So I've spent real time going into red states, red counties, going into the homes of Trump voters, sometimes with TV cameras, sometimes without, trying to understand. When I first started going, I think a lot of folks thought, well, great, Van's gonna go and he's gonna do some gotchas, right? He's gonna capture how horribly stupid and bigoted all these Trump voters are and prove us right. And that's not what I was trying to do, and that's not what's happened. Trump is much worse than even the most hysterical NPR liberal could have possibly imagined on November 9th. Let's just be clear. Trump is horrible. You just don't have it. You're in Hollywood. You think you've got a good imagination. You do not have a good enough imagination. You did not in the last election to even think up the stuff he's doing. So Trump is much worse than we feared. But there are a lot of his supporters who are a lot better than we know. And the fact that we ourselves, our hearts aren't big enough to take that in, says something about how we got into the situation. So I actually want to challenge us. It's easy for me. Listen, if I want to get applause and have people say nice stuff about me, I can just say every single time, the lying liar lied again. And everybody will be very happy with me. But I don't think that's good enough. You don't get this outcome without both political parties having a lot to take responsibility for. You don't get this kind of outcome without all of our movements needing to look in the mirror and figure out how we got this far away from the outcome that we were shooting for and that we deserve, and frankly, that the children for the next 7 generations need us to deliver on. How did we get to where we are? So I'm going to say some stuff that may offend you. I'm going to say some stuff that may challenge you. But I'm saying it because I actually believe that the solution to the problems we're talking about are in this room and in us making changes before we get anybody else to change. So first of all, I want to say that based on my experience going to Ohio, going to West Virginia, going to the border, going into the homes of Trump voters in Pennsylvania, that the rebellion in the country against Washington, D.C. is justified. It's justified. Not the form that it took, but the fact that a bunch of people have been left out and have been left behind. And they were left out and left behind by a bipartisan consensus at the top of both political parties. Both political parties signed off on NAFTA. Gingrich and Clinton said NAFTA would be a great thing. This trade deal, would be wonderful. That joining the WTO would be wonderful. And yeah, there might be some losers, but we were going to retrain all those workers, and we were going to make sure that everybody benefited. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And you go to those towns now that used to be proud towns with proud families, and what you find is opioid addiction like you can't believe. White male life expectancy in this country is now in reverse. It's in reverse. Now, they still outlive people of color, but the car is moving in the wrong direction because of people with hopelessness and desperation and addiction, eating themselves, drinking themselves, and drugging themselves to death. Both political parties signed off on those trade deals and didn't follow up on the promises. Both political parties said, let's deregulate the banks. What could possibly go wrong? Wall Street is oppressed. These poor bankers are being handcuffed, shackled by these regulations. Free the bankers. Leave Pookie in jail, but free the bankers. That was both political parties. What could possibly go wrong if you just let the banks do what they want to do? Everything went wrong. And both parties signed off on that. Both political parties said, let's build prisons from coast to coast. 3 strikes and you're out. And the kids doing drugs on the elite campuses where I went to school, they don't even know there's a war on drugs. They do whatever drugs they want to do. But kids 4 blocks away in the housing projects are all going to prison. And both political parties said that would make urban America better, and it's destroyed families, it's destroyed opportunity. So when Black Lives Matter starts marching, you may not like how they say it, but the rebellion is justified. Both political parties said these dumb wars that we've been in for now 15 years were justified. You go down the list of every time the elite bipartisan consensus formed, it formed in a way that hurt a bunch of people who haven't been heard from. And hurt people holler. Hurt people holler. When Black Lives Matter and the Dreamers holler, I like the way that it sounds. But a lot of people don't. But when the Tea Party and the Trump voters holler, I don't like the way that it sounds, but a lot of people do. And the question we have to ask ourselves, those of us who have been the winners in this whole 30-year game, how did we get so far away from our cousins and the people we went to high school with and the family members we can't even talk to anymore? How did we get so far away? And how can we get back so we can start solving problems together again and stop just yelling at each other or not even yelling at each other? Listen, I'm a part of the problem. I'm a part of a media system that works on the principle of every conversation has to be, I'm right and you're wrong. I don't care what media outlet it is, the American conversation has collapsed below a kindergarten level. I'm right and you're wrong and that's it. Or worse, we're right and they're wrong. And we're not even talking to each other, we're just talking about each other. The reason this is so heartbreaking for me is because of who we are. The people in this room are some of the most empathetic, big-hearted, kind people in the world. It's just true. You certainly are some of the most empathetic people to have a bunch of money. But you wouldn't know it looking at your Facebook page. You wouldn't know it looking at your Twitter account. How did we get here? I put it on us. There's some things I can say to you I can't say on TV. When I'm in those homes and I'm driving down those highways and I'm going to those rest stops and I'm talking to those waitresses, servant staff, whatever, I don't mean to say it the wrong way. It's not economic poverty that's driving us apart. There's a spiritual poverty. There's a spiritual poverty of just fear. And do I fit in? And does anybody care about me? And that's not just in the red states. It's in the blue states too. It's in this room. And if that's really what's going on, then maybe what we're doing, trying to fight polarization with polarization, might be the wrong strategy. Or it may not work by itself. I'm not saying we have to lay down. We got to fight. But the choice isn't just fight or submit. Of course we have to fight. But how do we fight? And who are we going to be when we fight? Are we just going to be the angry hashtag dude? I mean, is that your highest calling? To be the angriest hashtag on the internet? If that's your calling, you're doing a good job. We're doing a good job. But I think there's got to be another way to fight. We got to be fighting for people and not just against people. We got to be fighting for people and not just against people. Because I don't think we've taken seriously enough that when you talk about this environmental attack, and they talk about they're going to get rid of job-killing regulations, we're going to be looking down the barrel really soon in red states and blue states of child-killing deregulation. Child-killing deregulation. People say, well, Americans don't care about the environment. No, they don't, because environmentalists make sure you don't have to care about it. But you start rolling this stuff back, and you got poison in the groundwater again. You start rolling this stuff back, you got pollution in the lungs of our children again. You've got smog in American cities again. You've got products that will kill children again. We can't just be fighting against people. We got to be fighting for people. And they got to get that. They got to get that. And if we're not communicating that, and they're not hearing that, that's on us. Part of why I'm so tough on liberals and progressives is because I know your heart. All you guys are weird. You are. And you've been weird your whole life. You were weird in 3rd grade. You have neighbors and family members that could watch horror movies. You couldn't watch them. You couldn't. You'd run out of the room crying. You're weird. You care too much. Your hearts are too big. And that's why you're here. That's why you were born. That's who you are. Where'd that go? You're not going to be able to out-Trump Trump. You're going to suck at that. You're just not good at it. If there's spiritual poverty underneath all this fear in red states and blue states, some of you guys have a spiritual practice that you don't talk about publicly. I know you. You guys pretend, oh, you're secular, liberal, rational people. Ain't none of y'all rational. Y'all on y'all yoga mats. You got your self-help guru. You got your meditation app. I know you. You got your medium you consult with. You're not fooling anybody. But that's spirituality. I might offend you now. Stay with me. Can sometimes have a shadow where we're actually using it to pull away, almost pull up above what's happening, and it becomes this upwardly inflected om that floats above what's happening. But I think you actually have the potential to go from being spiritual to also being soulful. You've got the ability to maintain your center and go into tough places. Go into tough conversations. Use your yoga mat not as a landing pad, but as a springboard into places that need you. And I don't think we've been doing that enough. And when our light recedes, or when we just keep it on our app, or keep it in our yoga studio, or keep it in our company of friends, when that light recedes, other forces can move in. I want you to use what you've developed in yourself, what you've developed to heal yourself, to help heal some of these divisions so we can heal this earth. I want you to start taking the risks that we blame other people for not taking in terms of opening up our hearts for people. And there are two kinds of challenges that I want to lay in front of you. And again, the stakes are too high for me to be polite about it. I want to talk about how we hold on to greens of all colors and how we deal with the coal miners who we often are willing to dispose of Weird thing about environmentalists. Don't throw away an aluminum can around an environmentalist. If you want to see some real outrage, hit the wrong bin with your stuff. That's the blue bin. You can't throw away that piece of paper in the wrong bin. That paper has value. That paper has a future. You threw it in the wrong bin. But we stand on one side when whole communities of coal miners are being thrown away. And we don't bat an eye. I helped to start something called Green for All. Not green for some. Green for All. A young woman named Michelle Romero is here. By the way, give her a round of applause. She's wearing yellow back there. Give Michelle a big round of applause. Green for All is focused on getting environmental solutions and ecological solutions to the hood, where people are suffering and don't have jobs. We want to get people jobs putting up solar panels, jobs in organic food, jobs retrofitting homes. Ecological solutions or economic solutions. And for working folk, you got to talk about work, wealth, and health if you want people to buy in. You can't just talk about polar bears. I love polar bears. They don't love me. I've met them. They don't love me. I was in the Arctic. I was like, oh, I want to come see the polar bears. The people who live in the Arctic said, we don't want to see any polar bears. I said, why not? They eat people. I said, they don't put that on the little cards, when you send you the card and it's a beautiful little polar bear and you send in your money, they don't point out that the polar bear would actually eat you if they saw you. So I like polar bears. They don't like me. I like people too. And the same thing that'll save those polar bears will save people if you give people jobs and opportunity and contracts to retrofit the country. And Green for All has been focused on that. But I'm going to tell you something that's going to make you hang your head. Because our hearts are too small, we have a racially segregated environmental movement. We have a racially segregated environmental movement. We have a movement committed to ecological diversity that can't handle racial diversity yet. So how do we manage that? We just say we have mainstream environmentalists, meaning white people, and then we have environmental justice, meaning the black and brown and Native American groups that are often on the very front lines, whose kids are breathing the poison, whose kids are going to school setting off metal detectors, not because they have weapons, but because they have asthma inhalers in their pocket. Those groups, those communities, those organizations get pennies, while the big environmental groups get $100 million budgets every year. The entire environmental justice movement's budget, all groups, all in, is probably less than 10 million. And then what we do is we have a phony conversation with each other that's comfortable. So, well, what we should do is we should have a diversity initiative, and we should help these big environmental groups become more diverse. Then we have many conversations, and we all talk about it, and we go to the next conference, and we stroke our, and guess what? These groups are no more diverse now than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So I want to push this community. Rather than, I have a radical idea, rather than trying to get big, rich groups to be more diverse, why don't we get the diverse groups to be more rich? How about that? Why don't we take the groups that are already diverse and just make them big and rich? That'd solve it. We never think about that because sometimes we get comfortable. We want to figure out how we can make our own comfort zone a little bit different, as opposed to, I want to help you. I want to stand up a real movement. I'm going to tell you right now, if you had a real movement where everybody knew that we got about 50,000 coal miners in America, God bless them, I'll talk about them in 1 second. But you got 120,000 people working in solar right now. You got 130,000 people working in wind energy right now. The future for jobs, innovation, investment is on the clean energy side, hands down. If everybody knew that and felt that, and knew they would get more work and more wealth and more health making this movement go, you wouldn't be able to have a meeting in here. We'd be at the arena someplace. But you got to be in contact with people who are different colors of green to really see the power of this movement. And I think we have to be more open to that. But even that's the easy part. I spent time in West Virginia. I got a chance to see real heroes. Real heroes. If you can imagine what it would mean every day to go down in a hole that's a mile deep, just to keep the lights turned on for the country. Now you think to yourself, well, I'm sure that's a difficult job, but everyone has tough jobs. All right, let's go pry open the door of this elevator shaft, and you shimmy your butt down there 2 stories or 3. Maybe there's like a baby down there. If you had to do that, that's scary, man. And if you were able to do it and get the baby and come back up, you would want to be appreciated. You say, that was scary and it was dark. I messed up my blazer. But I did it, and here's a good result. You want to be appreciated. I met a guy that had spent 30,000 hours in the mine to keep the lights cut on for America. And it turns out that all of those coal miners, was it John, April the 1st? April 15th? All of them are going to lose their pension benefits and their health care benefits because those coal companies that you hate, because of what they do to the planet, are doing even worse things to the people who work for them. Those same dirty coal companies have gotten together and created a conspiracy to build a dummy coal company, and they dumped all the pension obligations over there, and then they took that company into bankruptcy so they don't have to pay these guys. So you got people who went down in those holes for decades for small paychecks, but with the promise of big pensions. And then when the fracking revolution came and natural gas went down in price, undercutting coal, which is the real reason coal's in trouble, not Barack Obama, but when the fracking that all these guys love so much undercut coal, and these coal companies got in trouble, the first thing they did was throw these guys in the garbage can. The last time I went to jail, I was not marching with Black Lives Matter in Oakland. I was marching with coal miners in Missouri trying to get their pensions back, because I've been moved by what these people have gone through. You shake hands with these guys, and they're all men, mostly, almost all. It's like shaking hands with a brick. Strong, proud, Not a lot of words. But they did their job. And they earned something. Broke their bodies. Now, black lung disease. But they did that because they knew that if not them, at least their widow would be taken care of. And that's a lie. And they feel like fools and they feel humiliated. The environmental community hasn't been there. It would be smart. Every dollar that these coal companies steal from these poor, retired, old, sick people, they're going to use to blow up mountains and pollute the world. Sick, retired coal miners don't pollute anybody. So it'd be smart to go and help. But even if it wasn't smart, it'd be right. If the coal companies were endangering a bird or a critter, we'd be there.